three officers pushed their way past the conductor and into the railroad car. Methodically, they came up the aisle, demanding each section stand and present identification papers and tickets, which they checked carefully. When they got to Rachel's little group, the SS officer, Frederick Hott, checked her papers first. Hate twisted his handsome features into an evil sneer. His cold blue eyes scanned her face as he held out a demanding gloved hand. She was forced to shift Clarine's sleeping baby to one arm and fish her papers awkwardly from her purse. When Hott finished checking them, he pushed the packet back into her hand so forcefully that he knocked her down into her seat. Baby Marie was jarred awake, and she and Jacques both began to cry. Hott leered at Clarine as he checked her papers. "So, Frau Hoffmann, did you think you could escape us?" he growled into her face. "Your husband and older son are already packed with other criminals into cattle cars headed east. It appears that wealth and fame and forged papers will not protect you from the justice of the Reich. It would be a shame for the family to be separated. You will accompany us from this train, and we will take you back where you and all Jewish criminals belong." One of the Vichy policemen slung Jacques squirming and shrieking under his arm. The other wrenched Clarine's elbows behind her and pushed her down the aisle. They were outside in seconds, and the train began to move down along the tracks away from them. As their train car passed her new friend, Rachel's eyes met Clarine's upturned face through the window. Outside, from below, Clarine mouthed, "Thank you for saving my baby." The entire scene took not more than 5 minutes.
"Come on, everybody," I bellowed from our living room. "Let's get this over with." "Kids, honey," I yelled from behind my camera, which was precariously perched on top of an Anthony's Seafood Matchbook, 2 beer coasters, 3 National Geographic magazines, Roget's Thesaurus, and our coffee table, at the precise trajectory needed to capture a centered image of our family of 5 and the dog in front of the fireplace. Knowing the tiniest slip of the hand, or the dog's tail, might ruin my painstakingly collaborated line of sight, I was reluctant to abandon my post. But when no one responded to my wails, I marched off to find them. 20 minutes later, I had managed to drag the resistant members of my family into the living room. Francis was miffed that I forced him to abandon a particularly riveting rerun of House Hunters. Hayden was annoyed that he had to pause Dragon Warrior 7 just as he was about to master Ranger class. Anna couldn't fathom that what was so important that she had to stop texting the cute boy from her statistics class. Lily was pouting about being torn away from Snapchat. They were all sporting major attitudes, but it was now or never. "Listen, I don't like this any more than you do, but our family and friends have come to expect a Molinari family photo Christmas card every year. So back straight, stomachs tight, and get happy, damn it." My moping gaggle huddled together on the fireplace hearth in shared irritation over being forced to pose for a family photo. "Leave a spot for me on the left and smile," I ordered from behind my camera. I gingerly jabbed the camera's timer button, careful not to knock the lens from its matchbook coaster thesaurus tripod, then leapt like an overweight gazelle across our faux oriental rug and into my designated position. "Mom, the camera's blinking." "Honey, when do you want us to smile?" "Are you sure you pressed the button, Mom?" "I don't know," I screeched through my grinning clenched teeth. "Just keep smiling." "But isn't it supposed to It flashed. It took 2 more takes before we realized the camera flashed after a prescribed series of slow and fast blinks. Hayden sneezed in the middle of take number 4. The phone rang during take number 5. I blinked in take number 6. We all got the giggles in take number 7 when Francis belched up a pungent odor reminiscent of Genoa salami. We finally realized we forgot to include the dog Moby, and it took 2 takes, 3 pieces of cheese, and a tennis ball before he would agree to sit. Somewhere along the way, I inadvertently nudged the June 2009 issue of National Geographic, and it took me 20 minutes and 3 more ruined takes to get the family centered in the viewfinder again. On take number 13, we were so desperate to end our torturous holiday photo odyssey, we all agreed to cooperate, and we took one final flawless shot. With my last ounce of patience, I tapped the button with cat-like precision and pounced into position, tipping my jaw forward to hide my double chin. The kids replaced their reluctant fake grins with genuine, sparkling smiles. Francis leaned behind me to hide his now sweat-stained armpit and mustered a charming pose. Moby sat in perfect obedience, his ears handsomely perked. Like the townspeople of Bethlehem, we looked for the bright light that would finally bring us salvation. "Why didn't it flash?" Francis whispered. After another minute, Lily extracted herself from our frozen pose to check the camera. Peering at the digital display, she read aloud, "Change battery pack." Realizing that a flawless family photo was never going to happen, we decided one of the 12 takes would have to do, because reality is as perfect as a family gets.
I coursed through the lush alfalfa and entered the timber, finding the cluster of oaks I'd been seeking. With a clear view of the valley below and the oak trees ripe with acorns, I couldn't imagine a more perfect spot. The ridge line ran east to west, which not only mirrored the buck's normal cruising pattern, but also allowed me to take advantage of the predominant northerly winds. Slowly but surely, I positioned each step within the oak's bark, climbing with excitement and a bit of apprehension. Before long, I ran out of steps, much sooner than someone blessed with longer legs, but at a height with which I was more than comfortable. I hugged the oak with all I could muster and hauled my stand skyward, with a flimsy rope that was anything but sturdy. Back then, safety belts seemed to be a new fad, and it now makes me shudder to think of all the close calls and wobbly tree stands under which I climbed. Still, ignorance is bliss, at least for the things we escape without harm, and my early years as a bow hunter were no exception. 30 minutes later, with bruised forearms and shreds of bark coating my collar, I was finished. I looked up at my stand hidden among the limbs and leaves, secured my pull rope, and walked back to my Ford. 2 weeks later, on October 29th, I was headed back to that Oak Ridge stand. The morning was calm and cool, far from the bitterness that November would bring. I climbed the grassy hillside to the alfalfa field atop its crest, and was relieved to not see white flags bounding away through the darkness. I reached the timberline, where the woodland's brittle and defeated leaves crunched beneath my boots, making each step sound as if I were walking on cornflakes. Soon, I had reached the stand's platform, and with no snorts or bounding footsteps to applaud my achievement, I felt a great sense of relief. I looked down from my perch and realized the morning was still in its infancy, the forest floor depicting a dark abyss rather than a woodland. I slowly pulled my bow up to the stand, secured my release, and nocked an arrow. It wasn't long before the ebony shadows dissipated, revealing a woodland in the throes of autumn. The hickories and elms had long since been stripped of their foliage, the first casualties of diminished daylight and colder weather. The oaks weren't giving up the ghost as easily, holding on to their leaves as if to rebel against the inevitable. Not long after sunrise, I heard a pair of wood ducks whistle by, catching only a glimpse of their dancing silhouettes between the tree limbs. A flock of honkers materialized overhead, their classic vocals and V-shaped patterns filling the morning air. I was glancing back and forth across the ridgeline when my ears picked up a faint sound to the east. It was not that of a fox squirrel, whose incessant and clumsy rustling had cost my heart one too many false starts in years past. No, this sound was more fluid and consistent, one that a whitetail walking with purpose would make. As sunlight painted the timber a luminous gold, I saw the first flash of antler coming toward me. The beautiful 8-pointer was cruising down the ridgeline, on a course that would bypass my stand well out of range. I fumbled with my jacket zipper, trying to retrieve my grunt call from the confines of my coat. Each time I pulled on the call's lanyard, it resisted, as if I were playing tug of war with a grunt tube. With more effort than should have been necessary, the call finally broke free, allowing me just enough time for a single audition. I bellowed from the reed-filled tube, doing my best impression of a disgruntled whitetail. The buck stopped on a dime, his white throat patch and ears now thrown in my direction. Seated and still, I did not move a muscle, straining to control the steam coming from my nervous breaths. The whitetail glared up the ridge in my direction, testing the wind that did him no favors, while turning his ears to decipher the sound. When the buck put his head down, I hit the call again, with the same cadence and volume as before. That was all it took. With confident strides, he began his ascent up the ridge, searching for his challenger, trying to pinpoint what his ears had conveyed. I readied my bow with trembling hands, noticing a mature white oak a mere 20 yards to my left. As the buck moved behind the tree's massive trunk, I came to full draw, following him as he reappeared on the other side. I grunted him to a stop, saw my pin settle behind his shoulders, and my arrow was gone.
All the work featured in this episode is available for purchase at bookshop.org/shop/MiPA. Your purchase from Bookshop directly supports independent booksellers, and when you use MiPA's affiliate link, you're directly supporting MiPA's programming as well. Visit bookshop.org/shop/MiPA.